Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, and we are at the Lug Nuts facility in Calgary, Barlow Trail and Glenmore Trail Southeast. And this is a shop where you can rent bays by the hour. They're fully equipped, and so I'm using it to do the photography and to put these vehicles on the hoist and do video walk-arounds, and also throw in a lot of information about Land Rover restoration. So even if you're not interested in this particular vehicle, I'll try to add as much content as I can should you ever wish to restore one of these on your own. Okay, so let's turn this camera around and we'll go inside where it's warm, and I'll show you around this 1959 Series 2 Land Rover 109 long wheelbase. All right, so the Rover car company made beautiful little sedans. They were kind of like junior Rolls Royces. If the managing director drove a Rolls or a Bentley, the accountants or the layer of management down drove a Rover. They were very well put together and very, very sweet little cars with a high degree of engineering. And Rover was definitely a quality product, at least they were, in the 50s and 60s. Okay, so when the war ends, all the manufacturers are scrambling to get the factories back to civilian production. They've been making armaments and so on, and all their designs are from the pre-war, and they're just trying to throw something together, put people to work, produce something. It's very austere in England. Steel is rationed, all kinds of stuff are rationed. They need to export everything to get foreign currency, and so the steel was in very short supply, but the aluminum wasn't, because the aluminum was used in all the aircraft. Okay, so that's why a Rover has an aluminum body, but it still has a steel chassis and a steel bulkhead, so they still do rust. Also, the aluminum and the steel, if they're left untouched with moisture, will suffer electrolytic corrosion. So it's not that Rovers don't corrode, because they do. Okay, so they don't want to spend a lot of money on tooling, and they want to use as many Rover car parts as they can. They come up with a Series 1. They develop a bunch of prototypes in 1947 and 1948. They go to, I think, the Amsterdam show off this little Rover, and they figure that it would be used on the farms, kind of replacing horses. It has all kinds of power takeoffs. They have welder versions and air compressor versions, and a rear PTO-driven drum, which you can attach a belt to it and run a table saw. There's a front winch you can use. There's a center PTO to run stuff in the back, like the air compressor and the welder. And they market these to farmers as a fast alternative, if you can believe that, to a tractor or horses. Okay, and then the Rover gets all kinds of other uses. They start going on expeditions. It wildly exceeds their forecasts, and it wasn't long. I think in the 50s they made their quarter of a millionth Rover. Okay, so that's the Series 1. It's 80, 86, and 88-inch wheelbases, and they're using the Rover IOE, inlet over exhaust, 4-cylinder, beautiful, smooth engine, not very powerful, only, I think, 50 and 52 horsepower, maybe one at 58. Okay, no, 50 and 52. Then it's very successful. They come out with their Series 2, and it's actually styled. And, it's got the, the sway, I guess it's not a swage line, but it has this curvature. In the bodywork, the Series 1s were just slab-sided, and they come up with a new family of engines, but production is very constrained. They have the couple different versions of it. They have the pickup truck. They have the long wheelbase and the short wheelbase, the 88 and the 109. They've got different configurations. They've got a station wagon. They've got a pickup, which this is, and they've got a plain utility vehicle. They decide to keep the 2-liter IOE 52 horsepower in the short wheelbase and put the new 2.25-liter engine unique to Land Rover, built for the Land Rover, in the larger 109s. That's in 58. A few years later in, well, I think 59, all the Series 2s got the 2.25-liter engine. All right, so now we've got a new body and we've got a 2.25-liter Rover engine. They had a diesel as well, and that was being redesigned. Here, pardon me while I do this. So they have a new diesel, and the diesel's being redesigned, and they want to have some parts commonality, and they want a 2.25-liter gas engine and a 2.25-liter diesel engine, and that means they redesign the Series 2 2.25-liter engine substantially so that they can share parts with the 2.25 diesel. That means that the Series 2 engine, which was a 2.25-liter 4-cylinder, it looks a lot like this, changed in 1961 to a new 2.25-liter 4-cylinder that looked the same and produced the same amount of power, but the difference is the internal components, the crank and so on, was shared with the diesel. The gas 2.25 and the diesel 2.25 share the same block and crankshaft. Okay, they differ in the connecting rods and they differ in the pistons to get a different compression ratio, but it's the same engine, okay? So that means that if you got a Series 2 Land Rover in 1958, well, it had the old Rover engine, the 2-liter engine, only 52 horsepower. If you got a 59, 60, or 61, you got the new 2.25-liter engine. But if you got a Series 2A, then it got a new 4-cylinder 2.25-liter engine that didn't share many parts with the earlier 2.25-liter Rover engine. Okay, and why that's significant is that nobody seems to care about the early Series 2A engines. The Series 2A engine, which came out in late 1961 and went well into, the 70s, is the one that everybody has parts for. Nobody wants to deal with, like, virtually only Dunsfold Land Rover, and I heard they're closing, or read that they're closing, offered any parts for that early 2.25-liter engine. So if you have a Series 2 with its original 2-liter engine, well, it's only got 52 horsepower and it's not very powerful. If you got a Series 2 with its original 2.25-liter engine, you're in trouble when you need to rebuild it because you can't share, you can't find the parts for it. So most of the Series 2s that were built that are still on the road have been retrofitted with a later Series 2A engine, including this car. This is a later Series 2A engine because nobody, I've got another Series 2 engine. If you want it, you can have it, but nobody wants that engine. You can't really do much about it, and it's really hard to get parts for it. Okay. This vehicle is a 1959 Series 2 that came with a 2.25-liter 4-cylinder engine, but that engine has been replaced for one from the mid-60s. Additionally, Rovers that were produced up to 1967 were positive earth, and this Rover is a negative earth. So, and it has a wiring harness from a later Series 2A, and it's a negative earth wiring harness, and it's negative earth with a later engine. So this vehicle looks exactly like, or almost exactly like, a Series 2 from 1959, but it has a later engine and updated electrical to be negative earth. Okay. There's a few other visual differences. Of course, this one has a lot of bare aluminum, and they never would have left the factory like that. They would have left the factory with a limestone roof and limestone wheels and all the body panels painted. But when I did it, I thought it would be kind of cool to leave the bonnet and the roof in bare aluminum, and to leave the front grille panel galvanized, because that's steel. This is a valance, and that's aluminum. It was an NOS piece. You can still see the little buffers on the side, which are held in there by brass rivets. So I decided to leave the center of the car in silver, basically, and that echoes, some of the pre-war racing cars with the silver bonnet, like a Napier Railton or something. Some of these great pre-war British racing cars had this aluminum bonnet and aluminum roof. Also, I think the Whittle Duesenberg, had the same thing. There's famous wooden boats on Lake Tahoe. There's Thunderbird. It's got an aluminum top section. You can order optionally on a new Rolls Royce an aluminum hood. I just thought it was just kind of cool to do it. I hadn't seen anybody do that on a Land Rover, and I just thought I would do it. Now, it gives the added advantage, of course, you can see if there's any damage to it or any filler in it, because of course it's pretty hard to hide filler when you've got bare aluminum. All right, so that kind of makes this one a little bit unique. If somebody didn't like it, okay, you can always paint it. And I also did the rear tailgate. This was a new piece, new manufacture, so I actually had to take it apart, drill out all the rivets, and then separate it. If you can see that here, this side and the top is galvanized, and this is aluminum. That's a later Defender tailgate. That's the only tailgate that I could get. Okay, so I hope that goes some way to explaining why it looks like that. The roof rack is from Brownchurch, okay, that completes the exterior. The soft top, we call this a 3/4 tilt, and that's a brand new piece from Exmoor in canvas. Okay, the wheels normally would be painted. I elected to galvanize them, and the trouble with galvanizing is that the surface is pretty rough, and so I sanded the inside of the wheel and then spray paint it with silver so that when we put the tires on, we didn't have any air leakage. And I thought that the silver tires, galvanized wheels, the galvanized bumper, galvanized bulkhead, I thought all that would go together, and galvanized frame. So all that, I think I'm really happy actually with the way that turned out. The bulkhead we galvanized as well. That is a little bit tricky because you hot dip it, sandblast it first, and then we hot dipped it, and it gets dipped at 800 degrees, and the zinc flows everywhere, including some place where you have captive nuts. And so there were a couple of places where you have to chase new threads and use new bolts to make that work. But I thought the advantages of a fully galvanized bulkhead outweighed the hassle, and I kind of like the look of it silver too. The floors, those are all bare aluminum, okay? And this piece, well, that's the bulkhead, it's galvanized. And then this piece here is steel, and it's painted gray. And this piece here is bare aluminum, and it is, it's just left bare. Okay, and then we galvanized the seat rails and the lids for the seat box. They're all bare aluminum. I galvanized this inner rail. If you wanted to put a headliner in it, that's what that rail is. They rust really badly. It's hard to find that. And so that was then galvanized. You know what? It wasn't galvanized. I painted it. It was a little bit too thin. The other problem with the galvanizing is if the metal's too thin, you'll warp it. So those are two things with galvanizing. You get hot, goopy zinc over everything, and it's really, really hot. And so if the metal's thin, it will warp. And yeah, that's right. That was just sandblasted and painted. Also, if you give the galvanizing company a piece of aluminum by mistake, you won't get it back. It's just melted. Okay, so this is the hood. There's this metal frame. From the factory, it's painted black and then riveted. And then from the factory, this would be, that's actually bare aluminum from the factory, and that's painted black. So I kept this bare aluminum, refinished it, but this was sandblasted and galvanized again. This piece was galvanized. For coatings where the galvanizing would be too goopy, we used CAD plating. So this piece here is then CAD plated. I think I've gone through the engine bay in another place, but there's a new old stock voltage regulator, new old stock fuse box, new coil, new brake and clutch reservoir, all the hydraulics, every single bit of the braking system from the lid of the master cylinder or the reservoir to the master cylinder, to the lines, to the junction pieces, to the wheel cylinders, brake shoes, all that's brand new. Wiring harness is brand new. All the linkages have been disassembled and then acid dipped and coated. If they're black, they're zinc, black zinc. And if they're silver CAD. Steering box was taken apart and it was in good shape, but relubed and resealed. All the pedal boxes were taken apart again. We took the engine, we took it down, we took the head off, we had a look at it, cleaned it up, everything was good. Good compression, good leak down. We replaced the head gasket. It's got a high performance starter, the new distributor, new Weber carburetor. We hydroblasted the intake manifold. The coat of paint on the engine blocks, not very good, but better than nothing. Not my best work painting the engine block, but it's okay. I suppose I could have painted the dipstick. All the other parts, heater, air cleaner, all that was taken apart, sandblasted, painted. Virtually, well, the entire engine bay here has been completely taken apart. The radiator's new from Rovers North, all new clips, all new wires, all new everything there. The buffer for the top of the grille panel. The bodywork is just okay. It's not a concours car. There's everything from chips in it where it's been sort of scuffed up. There's some filler in it in places. The rear box is, we can see the spot weld still, but there's dents in it. Of course, I drilled out all the rivets and took all the cappings off, and all that was regalvanized. The aluminum that's painted is just okay. It's not a concours job. It's serviceable. It's all right, but it's had a bit of a hard life. In the bed, we've got all the galvanized strips, and the floor, it's had its share of things thrown in here. Aluminum pickup beds don't survive too well. We've got the lockers. I was missing some pieces for the hinges, so I'm still looking for those. I'm not going to promise I find them, but I'm still looking for a few little pieces there. All of the hardtop was rebuilt. All the seals on the door are new old stock seals, which you can't even really get anymore. These are all the proper Land Rover seals. I riveted all of those in. And that's actually the biggest problem of the car, is that the seals are so stiff, I think because they're NOS, because they're so old, that the doors don't close. Like, they close to the first one, but there's another catch there, and it's just too stiff. Now, it's getting better, and I'm confident that in a little bit of time they will fit, but my door gap is out, and the door doesn't want to shut properly, and I could really force it, but I think I'd be denting it now, and I'm not even sure how that shipped, but it did. Okay, so if you're asking about the door fit, that's what's going on. They fit if they fit before I put the seals in. They just don't fit now. Galvanized the hinges. That's a new old stock. No, not new old stock. New door mirror. The hardware for the hinges inside is all new old stock. All the windows, door tops were all taken apart. All the bits were replated in cadmium. They were all new. There's all new weather seals in them. The retaining strips were all taken out and cleaned up. Those are aluminum. We have the Exmoor elephant hide door panels in it. The lock mechanism, that's all acid dipped and CAD plated. Everything in here is basically sandblasted or acid dipped, and then it was either painted, CAD plated, black zinc plated, or hot dipped galvanized. So there's no part of this car that has any corrosion in it, and there's no bolts that are rusty anywhere in the car. All right. Upholstery kit was from Exmoor. All this was rebuilt for the hardtop with new window channels, new seals, etc. The interior light was new. This wiper motor, they did work. That one works. This one gave up. I'm not sure what's the matter with it. I'll see if it's something easy. Otherwise, count on trying to sort that out, or at least switching them so you've got one that works. They're useless anyway, but they should work. I have a electric fuel pump because the engine-driven one, I just couldn't get it to work properly. I believe basically it's just the reproduction parts that are available. So I just put an electric fuel pump in. I've gone through the driving video explaining all of the controls. I maybe didn't do a good job with this inclinometer. I thought that was pretty cool. I just got that off eBay, and it's from a World War II aircraft. Okay, so that is the exterior. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the kinds of Land Rover restorations that you can find. At the very, very high end, you could go to North American Overland or equivalent, and they'll build you a new Rover for $110,000 or $120,000. They'll get a new frame, a new Turner engine, a new bulkhead, new doors, new side screens, new fenders, new exhaust, like basically buy as many new parts as they can, and then salvage whatever they can from a donor car, which is basically the bodywork, okay? Not even, actually, just the rear tub, really. So those cars are beautiful, and I'm sure they've got their hours into it and their expenses into it, and they're basically brand new cars. I would say that they're not so much a historical artifact because there's not much DNA left in it from the 1960s. It's mostly all just brand new. Then there are concours cars. And I've done one of those before. I did a Series 1 that's a concours, and that is where every bit of it is original, correct, perfect. I spent 7 years building one of those, and I'll flash the, it was written up in Sports Car Market. I took it to the RM auction in Monterey in '05. I got a world record price for it. I still lost a lot of money, and it was perfect. And it was absolutely as good as the Land Rover Reborn program. So that's another way to get it, but that isn't the same as the North American Overland Rover, because the Concours one is all original. Every part of that is original. If Pebble Beach had a class for Land Rovers, which is unlikely, this would win the class. All right. Okay. Then you can get Rovers that are like more resto mods. So, you know, they've got a later Defender engine in them. They might have a Defender frame, which is coil sprung. They might look a little bit like an old Land Rover, but they've got modern 5-speed gearboxes and et cetera. And there's all kinds of variations of those. Some of them are very well done and very expensive. They can be over $200,000. Okay, so those are kind of the variations. Now, when you start getting into things that are less than 100 grand, then there's a whole lot of variety as well. The worst of it, and the one you really shouldn't buy, is the one where it just got a quick lick of paint over everything, and they painted over all the galvanizing because they didn't want to take it apart. They didn't take, you know, the bulkhead out. They just spray painted over everything, put an interior in it, maybe some wheels, and the engine bay is grubby or whatever. Well, don't buy that, because that's just an old truck with lipstick on it. Okay, so you can find those, and in my opinion, you should avoid them. Buy an original truck that looks original, that looks grubby, where half the paint's gone, and buy that one. But don't buy that truck where somebody decided to put some glossy paint over it, okay? That's just terrible. All right. Then you get the trucks that are, you know, that somebody did half a decent job, half a decent effort on, and you know, they may have regalvanized the cappings or just painted around the cappings. The truck was never really taken apart, but it, you know, they went through it and replaced what needed to be replaced, and so on. And you know, those can be decent drivers, or they can just be old trucks that, you know, that are never going to be reliable because everything in it's like 50 years old or 60 years old, and they just replaced a few things to kind of get it working enough for it to sell. But the minute you try to drive it, you know, one thing after the other is going to go. Okay, so where does that leave this truck? I guess I'm trying to. Well, this one is completely taken apart with every part gone through, and virtually everything new, and the DNA of everything in here almost dates from the 60s. It has a later engine, which is a good thing. It has been changed to negative earth from positive. Again, that's a good thing. It's the desirable banjo steering, lights in the grille panel, individual wiper motors. That's I think pre-1967. They went to the one wiper motor and the linkage along with positive earth in 1967. So this isn't and was never intended to be a concours vehicle in the sense of winning a show. It's meant to be a driver, but I didn't want any corrosion. I wanted everything to be rebuilt so it was reliable. I didn't care that much if there was some dents in it or the chassis was a little bit banged up, as long as it wasn't rusty. I wanted it to look good, but I wanted it to be able to use it, and I wanted to, you know, throw some stuff in the back and not worry about it, and get it muddy and not worry about it. So that's what this is not a concours vehicle, but not just a refurbishment. It's a completely restored vehicle, but one that is done to an excellent driver standard. Not trying to be a show car. but not cutting a bunch of corners either. So I hope that helps understand what this car is. It's on Bring a Trailer. It'll be no reserve. I think you can have some confidence that, you know, it's a good truck. I'm including a spreadsheet of all the money I spent on it, which is substantial. And I couldn't do it again for that much money because the parts have gone up and the shipping's gone up and the metalwork is, like, everything went up in price in the last 5 years. And so, and restoration work, it's hard to get anybody to work on your cars now, at least around here. So I think it's a good opportunity for somebody. There you go. If you did want a perfect concours vehicle, well, I am doing one of those too. It's an 88-inch, and I'm painting it green sand, which is actually it's a Jaguar color, but it'll be like a perfect car, and I'm just putting that together right now. But that one, and like my earlier Series 1s, you kind of don't want to get it dirty. This is one that, you know, you can use. Okay, thank you very much. Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, and the great Lug Nuts facility, who I'm very pleased to be able to use, especially since it's really cold out right now. Bye-bye. Okay, so let's get this Land Rover up on the hoist, and I'll show you what it looks like underneath. Okay, so the Rover was completely taken apart, back down to the frame, and then the frame was galvanized. I can't get it a lot higher on the hoist because of the roof rack, so I'm squatting here. Okay, so it was completely disassembled, and then we took the frame in and we got it galvanized. There wasn't any rust on the frame virtually at all. There was no rust repair to it, and we didn't do any repair to the frame. It was actually really solid. That said, the frame has been, I mean, this truck didn't have an easy life, at least in the beginning. And so you can see some dents and so on, and some patches in the cross members where it you know, ran over something. Also on one of the sides here, we can see a rather crude repair right there. Where the frames on the Land Rovers usually go is in the rear here, and this is where you normally see the rust, and normally the rear cross member needs to be replaced. So the way these things go is they'll rust in the rear cross member first, they'll rust in the bulkhead, then the sills will go, and the outriggers. So then these things will rust out where it surrounds the fuel tank, and then you need a new frame. So many of the Rovers will have had a new cross, you know, most of them will have had a new rear cross member, and most of them will have had, you know, these floors rust out. So there's normally quite a bit of rust in there and in the side of the bulkhead here, okay? So we galvanized everything. The rear cross member was pretty good, but like I said, this vehicle was banged up a little bit, and so we can see, you know, a couple little dents in there. It wasn't perfect, but it's pretty straight, and again it was rust free. The frame rails were excellent. There was no other rust on the chassis. So it was sandblasted, it came back really good, and then it was galvanized. When it was galvanized, I mean, it's filled with zinc at, you know, 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And we had a few places in the chassis where the weld split and the zinc poured out, which is a good thing, I think, because it coated the inside of the chassis with zinc as well. So this chassis, you is never going to rust. But there's a couple of these black marks. Now what that is 3M automotive grade epoxy. So just to seal that, I put that in. It goes in like a putty, it's rock hard, and it'll never, it's probably as strong as the weld is. So that happened in a few places in the rear of the chassis. It's still welded on 3 sides. There is no structure. You can see a bit of it up there. There's no structural issue with it. And, I could have left it open and just left it as like a drain, for water. But I thought, no, I already got a couple holes in it there, so I sealed it. All right. So, and that's in a few, maybe half a dozen places in the rear. Nothing any longer than a couple of inches. The front of the chassis, there's nothing. It's all, it was all perfect. Okay, so that is there. So if you're looking for a perfect chassis, well, it's not really perfect. It's got some dents in it, but it's pretty good. And it is the original chassis. So the DNA of the vehicle, its main structural element, is from 1959, and I think that that's important. We could have got a new chassis too. You can't really see it, but the chassis number would be there. I do have a photograph of that before we galvanized it, but it's kind of covered in zinc now. Okay, so the bumper and the bumper tops, these are military items. They were new old stock. This item here is a Series 2 piece. A Series 2A, it would be curved. And so that's unique to the 58, 59, 60, and 61 Series 2. The grille panel was unrusty, and we didn't do any repair to that at all. We just sandblasted it and we galvanized it. The springs in the car were original and they were good. So we cleaned them up and that's it. We did put in new U-bolts and new hardware. The swivel balls and all the axle components, the brakes, that's all new. The steering damper here is new. The brake lines are new. The ball joints are new. The axle bump stops are new. What else can I show you? Okay, so let's go through there. The shocks are new, or they were new a few years ago. The exhaust is NOS. And the differential seals we did. And what else? Transmission mounts were new. And the engine mounts, which I guess live right above there, are new as well. You see a kind of a rough repair on these cross members where they hit rocks. The handbrake assembly was all sandblasted and then coated, and you can see that's a CAD plating on there, and all that whole assembly was refreshed. The handbrake, which lives there, all that internally is new. And the differential was good. We didn't do anything with the differential. We can see the new brake lines, all the junctions. There's I don't know if you can see it. I guess it lives up there. There's a T-junction for the brake lines. That's all new. So every part of the braking system is new. Shocks in the rear. You can see the rear axle. Bump stops, the check straps were new, the shocks were new, exhaust brackets were new. You can see the other exhaust bracket there. Rear springs we reused. So overall, there's the rear cross member. So overall, it's solid, it's unrusty, it's not concours. But it's serviceable, and it'll last another 60 years before you need to do anything with it, well, it'll probably last longer than that given the use it's likely to have, okay? So it's straight, unrusted, and fully galvanized, which means it's just not going to corrode anymore. Okay, so we'll put this back down on the hoist and do a summary. I know that people are anxious to see driving videos, cold start videos. We'll also do a video of the undercarriage and so on, but this one will just start it up. Not particularly cold for the end of November in Calgary. It's about 4 or 5 degrees, but it hasn't been started in a couple of days, and so we'll just do that now. It's never given me any trouble. It doesn't put out a cloud of blue smoke. It starts pretty quickly, warms up pretty quickly, but I will demonstrate that. So let's turn the camera around. So with this car, I installed an electric fuel pump. I had trouble with the mechanical one. I tried to rebuild it, or rather my mechanic tried to rebuild it, and it just didn't work very well. And so I just got tired of it and put in an electric fuel pump. Okay, so that's off. This is on, so we'll turn the ignition on. Turn on the fuel pump. You can hear it priming. We have a choke down there. It's an NOS knob and choke cable. Let that go for a couple of seconds, and the car starts. Okay, and if I look outside, that isn't blue smoke. That's just white smoke because it's a little bit cold. There's no oil smell at all, so it's not burning blue when it starts. I can use the hand throttle if I want to set the idle and increase it. So I'll put it at maybe 1,000 RPM or so. I will let it warm up. I'll go inside, get the GoPro, and then we'll take this Rover out for a drive. But let's just go look in the engine compartment now. And we can see that it's happily purring away here. And it'll probably go down to about, you know, when I take off the choke and the hand throttle, probably down to about 400 or 500 RPM. So this thing vibrates a little bit. So I'll just let you listen to that. It sounds like a Land Rover. And the choke's now off, and the hand throttle's at its lowest. The hand throttle's off too. So, and that's I think about 30 seconds after I started it, and you can see that. It's running very happily. So for this engine, it was rebuilt by a previous owner in Regina. He was a mechanic. I don't know how long ago that was. I think about 10 years ago, but hardly any kilometers or hardly any mileage. We took it down to, we took the head off and had a look at the bores, and they were fine. The head was fine. We cleaned it up a little bit and put a new head gasket in it. But nothing. We didn't need to do anything else with the engine. All the ancillaries, though, we did change. So the generator is rebuilt. It's a new Weber carburetor. The intake manifold was blasted by it was like a water with a bit of media in it to clean up the aluminum. The exhaust manifold we didn't do anything with. The exhaust is NOS. The coil is new. There's a starter, one of those high-performance starters that replaced the original Lucas version, so that works a whole lot better. The battery is about, I don't know, 3-4 years old or something, but it's still good. We have the distributor, that's a new piece from Rovers North, a new manufacturer for that. We have the voltage regulator with NOS, and the fuse box is NOS. The radiator, or the heater, I took it apart, and the heater core was pressure tested, and then that was sandblasted and put back together. The motor was fine. What else is in here? You can see the fuel pump still there, down there, but it's bypassed, and on the firewall there's a new electric fuel pump and a filter as well. Okay, so that's what that is. That's the hand throttle back there. All of the brake, they spilt a bunch of brake fluid. That's a brand new brake and clutch reservoir. They spilt a bunch of brake fluid on it, so all the paint fell off. All these pieces are hydraulics are new, NOS actually, and all of the lines are new, all the brake lines. It has a block heater cord, and thermostat in there is new. The water pump I don't think we did. I think it was good. We didn't need to do anything with that. I took the fan apart and cleaned it up and painted it. The hoses are new. The radiator is a new piece from Rovers North. The wiring harness is all new. I put a little bit of heat shrink on some of these, but I actually didn't heat it up and seal it yet, just in case I needed to take it apart again, which I don't. So I could go do that and heat up that and just seal it. So maybe I'll do that before I deliver the car. So it's in a few places. All the linkages are all new. So all this cross shaft here and all of these pieces, that's all been taken apart and plated. If it's black, it's a black zinc coating, and if it's silver, it's a silver cadmium plating. So all of that has been redone, and all these pieces have been recoated. I guess not the spring. I had to find an extra spring, and it wasn't recoated, but everything else is. And there's a lot of pieces back there with that. What else can I tell you? The NOS battery leads. Kind of a little bit goofy the way I did that, but I wanted to keep the original Lucas battery leads. That's the grounding strap. It's a negative earth. The Rovers prior to 67 were positive earth. And we can see the underside of the hood. This is alloy aluminum, which has been polished. This is a steel frame. From the factory, it was painted black, but I galvanized it, and then that is riveted together for strength. So all of that is done nicely. And I think I have an extra couple plaques that I'll also include with the car. Okay, so, but as you can see, the car runs really sweetly. Now we did check compression, we checked leak down, all of that was good. The compression was 135 across the board. We've checked the timing, all that stuff's been done. And it's in good shape. You can see the steering arms down there, and all those ball joints are new, engine mounts are new. You can see down there, there's other ball joints. We'll look at the chassis a little bit later when we have the car on the hoist, and you can see all that work. fuel pump on. I had it warmed up, so I don't need to use the choke. See the fuel pump or the fuel gauge reacting. We have 20 psi oil pressure. Temperature is around 85 degrees, and it's idling nicely. Handbrake off. I'm just going to reverse here. And then gravel. Okay, so I might as well show you the low range. So that's the red lever down here. Can you see that? Maybe not. All right, so main gearbox is in neutral, and we push in double clutch, I think. Put it in low range. That automatically selects four-wheel drive. Okay, so that's low range and four-wheel drive. And here we go, and have no problem getting over this gravel. And we can go up through the gears here. Second, third, and fourth. Top speed might be about 30 kilometers an hour. So that's in four-wheel drive. If I hit the yellow knob, I can release the four-wheel drive, and now we're low range rear-wheel drive. If I stop, put it in neutral, I can shift back to high range, okay, and then I can select first gear again. If you put your knuckle in the wrong place, you'll scrape it on the edge of this heater. Ask me how I know that. Okay, so now we're in high range again. First gear, second gear, third gear, and fourth gear. The synchro is good. I can just go straight into third gear, and it's fine. You could also, double clutch if you wanted as well. That's a little bit easier, okay? Into second, first and second are in synchro. So if you want to double clutch and match your revs, you can get into second. But it takes a little bit of practice with this car. But if you're going to do it, pull it out of gear, push out, let out the clutch, push in the clutch, flip the throttle, and it'll go in. It's hard to do it without a grind. I'll try to do a successful one here. Okay, so it takes a little bit of practice, and the gearbox is still a little bit cool. Okay, so drive's fine. If I want to brake in a hurry, it slows down pretty fast. Okay, so when you slow down like that, you should probably put it in third gear to slow the synchros down, then second or first. It takes a little bit of practice to upshift without a little bit of a grind. It is possible. Suspension's tight. There's not a lot of free play in the steering box, so that we took all that apart and resealed it, and there is no wear in it, so it's very tight for a Land Rover. The suspension is tight. It has new shocks. The springs were okay. We didn't replace the springs, just cleaned them up. The U-bolts and all that hardware was new. Check straps were new. The braking system's all new. Every line, every piece, every fitting is new on this truck. Blower motor works, and heater works nicely. I don't have the piece for the demister, but you can buy it, and then it just connects to this piece right there. There's several different kinds of Kodiak heaters, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5. They're all a little bit different, but there's a fitting that goes over these two wiper motors. The wiper motors, they're pretty feeble. Oh, this one's stuck a little bit. I'll show you that later. So you can do them by hand. I guess that's why they designed them that way. And then that turns them on. You wouldn't want to rely on that. My shifting's getting a little bit better, actually. Also, the gearbox is warming up, so it's a bit easier. Some interior kits where they're like a thick rubber matting for the seat box and so on. There's a lot of aluminum metal panels that vibrate that make quite a racket. You can quieten it down quite a bit by one of these acoustic sound deadening kits. You can get them from Rovers North or directly from Exmoor Trim. And Exmoor is the supplier of the elephant hide upholstery and the canvas tilt. So they're the best supplier of Land Rover interior and fabric pieces. On the Trans-Canada Highway now. Visibility isn't fantastic, but I've got a decent window out the back and these two side mirrors, so it's not too bad. There was a famous advertisement for Rolls-Royce in the 60s. And it said, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in a Rolls-Royce is the electric clock. There's another ad agency, I think the one that VW used for their bug advertisements. Can't remember. I made it a parody of it for Land Rover. I'll try to find it and put it in the video. And they said at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in the Land Rover was the scream of the engine. And then they went on to tell you, parody the Rolls-Royce ad. And it was quite amusing. Conversation's barely possible, but like I said, the sound deadening makes quite a big difference. So I'm seeing about 65 psi oil pressure. Temperature is 75 degrees. So it's not having any trouble. If there's an incline, it'll slow down a little bit. You're going to be in the slow lane wherever you go, but it's not too bad. You could fit an overdrive. The engine's in a good state of tune, so it would still pull at a lower RPM. So that's a modification that some people will ask about. Normally you just pull up to a stop and then put it in third gear to slow everything down. Second and first. Quite torquey, so I could probably even stay in third gear from basically, you know, a crawl.